So let's move on. That's the one problem. That's just the title deeds that are the properties on the deeds registry with compromised title deeds. Let's have a look at the backlog. These are properties. They haven't quite made it to registration in the hands of the beneficiary. And the backlog arises for two distinct sort of reasons that are associated with the process of getting a property recognized in the deeds office. So you've got this very elaborate process to assign rights to land and to portion out the, is this okay? Okay, great. And to apportion out the property and to register that property in the deeds office. That's called the township establishment process, and it kind of ends with the township register being opened and in the township proclamation process. And then after that, we've got the beneficiary administration process, and the mayor spoke about some of that, where you've now got to verify who's living in the house, because many years ago, the original beneficiary moved in, but life has happened subsequently. So we split this out into two distinct processes. There's a whole lot of activity happening around township establishment, and we can see that, and that's sort of administered by the Office of the Surveyor General. And then you've got the activities around transferring that property to the beneficiary, and that's visible in the deeds office. And that's the beneficiary administration process. So if we talk about the title deed backlog, we've kind of called backlog 1 the beneficiary administration backlog, and that's because the way you solve this problem is from the end of the process working backwards. That's what Jermaine Abrams, our town planner who works with us, always says. You start at the end and you work backwards when you're solving this. So that's our backlog 1. The property's in the deeds office, it's there, we can see it, it's owned by the municipality. We just need to transfer that to the rightful owner. But it's a hell of a lot simpler than backlog 2, where we've got one or other problem that happened in township establishment. Maybe someone forgot to pave 500 meters of road, or no one signed off on the conditions of establishment. And Pete, our colleague here, who you can talk to with a drink in your hand, I suggest you have a drink in your hand when you talk to Pete. He works with the municipalities, the metros, on some of these issues. And they are very, very complex to solve and will take many, many years. So how big is the problem? Well, we've quantified this, and my colleague Aviva has worked very hard to do this. We take data, we start with the Surveyor General, all the approved general plans. We then go and look how many of those have got properties on them using the Google Footprints, building footprints data. Then we try and find those properties in the deeds office, and we then overlay Stats SA data so we can see which municipality they're in. And our estimate for the title deed backlog in South Africa actually comes out very closely to the National Department of Human Settlements estimate, which was very surprising, actually. I was always sure that they were completely overstating this, and then I must say I was very disappointed to be proven wrong. Sometimes I'm delighted to be wrong. In this case, I was very upset to be wrong, because it is around 1 million properties, which is huge, huge. And the majority, around 850,000 of those properties, are what we call backlog 2. Those are the ones that are very hard to solve. And around 200,000 of them are backlog 1. And I say they're easier to solve, but don't for a minute think it's easy to solve. If we look at this at a metro view, and we're still finalizing our numbers with the City of Cape Town, I think the deeds office data, anyone worked with the deeds office data knows, and we certainly work with many data sets from many countries in many different sectors, and hands down, deeds office data in South Africa is the worst data set to work with, which is quite incredible. But remember, it doesn't matter what's in the data, because ours is a system of deeds. You need the physical piece of paper, so they don't care that their data is an absolute, I was going to say something, but I'll just call it a horror show. Anyway, so we're still working with the City of Cape Town to validate our numbers with them. We get around 21,000 that are backlog 1, in other words, beneficiary administration processes can continue, and around another 48,000 or so that are in areas where we've got some kind of proclamation or township establishment issue. And actually in Cape Town, when you look at the numbers by general plan number, you see they kind of scattered, a lot of them are scattered all over the place. There are some that are very concentrated. And we're working with the GIS team in Cape Town just to try and figure out, oh, have we missed something? Is there something that we need to refine? But it's quite interesting to look at the data. You can see very significant numbers in Gauteng, and I should have mentioned on the previous slide, a quarter of the 1 million title deed backlog actually in Gauteng. So it's a significant challenge. But this is across the metros. And why do we focus on the metros? Firstly, because of the program that Pete works on, the Metro Title Reform Support something, that he works on with all the metros, MTRS, and also because the metros are kind of where we think the jobs are. And so when we talk about these properties being poorly located, they're still in a metro. And hopefully, if there was somewhat decent transport, still within access of jobs, obviously assuming there are jobs. So that's our view on the title deed backlog, very significant challenge.